meeting of the Kingman City Council to order on Tuesday, July 7th, 2020 at 5 o'clock p.m. Could we have a roll call, please, Annie?
Mayor Miles,
Here.
Vice Mayor Lingenfelter,
Here.
Councilmember Mello Keener,
Here.
Councilmember Nelson,
Here.
Councilmember Scott Staley,
Present.
Councilmember Watkins,
Here.
and Councilmember Waite.
I'm here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Annie. Tonight we have with us Kip Anderson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to provide our invocation. Thank you.
Thank you. You can hear me fine?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and pray then. Our dear Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening with gratitude and with thankfulness for our many blessings. We're grateful to live in this good land, grateful for the freedoms that we enjoy, for the opportunities to grow and to serve and to live in this good community. We pray a blessing on this council, that they might be strengthened, that they might be blessed with health, and that they'll be blessed with decisions and the ability to make decisions that will bless the lives of those who live in the city of Kingman and in this area. We pray a blessing on the leaders of our nation and of our state. Might they also be blessed with strength and with health and with the ability to make good decisions. We're so very grateful for what we have. We acknowledge the blessings of life, the blessings of freedom, and again, express and give thanks for all that we have, and ask for a blessing to be with this council this evening as they conduct their business, as they make decisions, that they'll be guided and directed through thy Holy Spirit and make decisions that will benefit the people and be a blessing to those here in this area. And these things we ask and pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you please join me now in the Pledge of Allegiance to our nation's flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first order of business is a call to the public. This is a virtual meeting, and public comments had to be submitted to the clerk's office. The in-person attendance was suspended due to the COVID-19 pandemic, so we're holding it through technological means. The comments were to be submitted in writing to the city clerk's office via email, by placing them in a drop box at the city complex, or by mailing them to our City Hall at 310 North 4th Street. They were accepted up till 9 a.m. On July 7th, 2020, and all comments were to be shared with the council and made a part of the public record. Members of the public can watch or listen to the meeting live via Channel 4 on YouTube at youtube.com/City of Kingman. Annie, did we receive any public comments?
We did not, Mayor.
Thank you. Then we will move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed here are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. There are consent agenda items A through F. Do any of the members of the council want to remove an item for discussion? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through F.
Mayor, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilor Staley. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed, nay? Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Let's move on to old business. The first order of old business is the facade improvement program. In 2019, the City of Kingman implemented a facade improvement program to improve the appearance of commercial buildings in downtown Kingman. In continued efforts to support local small businesses, the Economic Development Department is proposing an expanded facade improvement program that includes more funding, higher percent of matching funds. All small business and city limits are eligible, and the inclusion of an architect to consult property owners. Staff recommends approval. Manager Foggin.
Thank you, Mayor. As we talked about through the budget process, we have redesigned some of the policies within our already existing facade grant program. And so basically, I've asked Gary and Sylvia to work on this and to provide a little more insight into the individual items that we're proposing to change. So Gary, Sylvia?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. First, I really created this program and helped this year when Mr. Foggin asked us to take a look and see what else could we do to certainly help our merchants and our downtown folks through this rough time. We looked at one of the we could do and improve the agreement. So funding the facade agreement are a maximum of $9,000, and it's a 90-10 match. And so we also, one of the things that we found, some folks what to do.
Something's wrong with either your connection or your sound. You're breaking up really bad. To fix that, probably turn off your camera. I apologize, but
Okay.
the streaming seems to be interfering with your sound.
Is that better, Ron? Now, it's not, we're not muted.
No, your connection's bad. Take it from the top.
Okay. All right. Is that any better?
It seems better.
Okay, I will talk a little bit slower then. All right. I think my first statement was that I certainly wanted to give credit where
Gary, you're still really bad.
I can provide the call-in number if we want to try that.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Gary, check for the call-in number and just use a phone.
Okay.
Should we, well, he's probably got the next one too, doesn't he?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
We've got to get his sound better.
Okay.
Okay, we need to get out of this completely then, right?
Annie, go ahead and mute the computer.
Okay.
Gary, I just sent that to you in a text.
Annie, is there a waiting room issue if they call in?
No, I'm monitoring for them.
Thank you. You gotta love technical difficulty of the live shows.
How life used to be in early television, right? Annie, can you call them?
They have to call in, Mayor.
They
be
have to
able
call in?
participate. Yeah. Mayor, just in, while we're waiting. Oh, I think they're on.
Okay. Are you with me now?
Annie, you gotta mute the, yep, there you go. We're ready, Gary.
Okay, are we there? Okay. All right, let's start over again. Sorry about all this technical difficulty. We thought we had this thing knocked. So basically what I was saying earlier was that when we first set up the first facade program, Sylvia had designed this. And so when Ron came to us during COVID and said, I'd like to really look and see what else we can do, and we pulled some additional monies out of the budget, was to enhance and improve the facade program. So we went from 5,000 max with the match to 9,000, and so it's a 90-10 match. And so one of the things that we found along the way was that some of our clients downtown or in the businesses, they wanted to improve the look of the business, but they didn't know where to start. And so one of the things we've included in this package is now is up to 3 hours of a local architect who will help them design so that they can answer these questions. So basically that's what you have in front of you this evening is an enhanced program. And so an additional $90,000 was set aside. It also includes a signing element in there. And we kept the program simple and easy using the same format that we did when we started the first facade program. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. And Sylvia and I are both here to answer any questions that you might have.
Did you say that this program is available to all of our businesses?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any questions for Kellogg?
I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, I was just asking council if they had any questions or comments.
Oh.
I have a few questions, if I may, Mayor.
Certainly, Councilor White.
Thank you. So as I was looking through, can you hear me? Just want to make sure. Okay. So as I was looking through the information that was sent to us, I guess some of the questions I had, you had just answered. I think you mentioned that we were going to go, or that it's proposed that we go from 20,000 to 90,000. That's the increase. I didn't see that in the material, but the questions I had included some of the proposed changes, one of them being that the quote requirements from 3 to 1. Now, the background information suggested that at times there were certain projects where it was too difficult for applicants to find more than one quote or company that would be able to complete the task. So the proposal is to reduce the requirement from 3 to 1. And I wonder if we had considered possibly keeping it at 3, but or like saying, making it so that I think that the underlying issue or the reason why we originally put 3 is that at times, if somebody finds a construction worker or somebody who can do this thing and they charge, exorbitant, outrageous prices, that's the quote that we have to work off of. And I understand that sometimes you can only find one person to do that thing, but ideally, I mean, there are a number of reasons why 3 would be better than 1. So if possible, it'd be great to have 3, and if not possible, I guess 1 could be acceptable. Have we considered that? Because like I said, I'd rather have 3 if we can get 3, but if you automatically reduce it from 3 to 1, we kind of sidestep all of the issues why we placed 3 quotes in place at the outset. Does that make any sense?
We certainly could do that, Councilman, and create that in a waiver form. We found on the first go around that some of they just couldn't get the contractors to even talk to them. So because of the size of the project, but we certainly could keep it at 3, and then we could waive if they just ran up against a brick wall.
That'd be good. And certainly we wouldn't want to discourage anyone through the language of saying we want 3 and we might reduce it to 1. So hopefully it can be written in such a way that wouldn't make an applicant look at it and say, oh, I can't get 3, or I don't want to even try, or you know what I'm saying? I don't, obviously they have to put forth some effort, but I don't want to discourage somebody from trying to get 3 or you know, I imagine that whoever reviews these applications kind of understands, you know, what construction companies exist in Kingman or what possibilities exist. So, you know, if you were to see someone put 1 and they could have got 3 because you've seen 2 others that could have done it, then perhaps we could reach out to them at that point. But like I said, if we could just kind of leave that option open so that it's not just now we're just requiring 1, because again, we'd like people to at least, you know, make a good faith effort to you know, shop around and get the better quotes and give other people the opportunity to do that thing.
We certainly can do that if you are okay with the waiver part, so that if they do run up against it, we have that flexibility. I think that would be good for both of us.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that would be good if everyone's in agreement with that. And then I had a few other questions. One of the proposal includes an amendment that says that an architect will be included free of cost to the applicant. And my question is, how much would that cost? I mean, it doesn't say anywhere in the background material how much that might cost. I mean, do we have someone who works for the city who could do that, or are we going to subcontract that out? And how much are they going to charge us? You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't want 600 applications to go out and suddenly we have a $600,000 bill, you know? I mean, I don't even know how to quantify it. I don't know how much they would charge, but I don't want that.
It's up to 3 hours, and it's at $160 an hour, and it is a licensed architect, and we control that. We control that payment. So.
Gary, is that part of the, is that included in the $9,000 max, or is that above and beyond?
No, it's included in the 9,000. If they need the architect, if they in fact need the architect.
Right,
Some
that's
may
what I
not.
was asking. So,
Right.
So right now we could have, if it's budgeted at 90,000, if only, well, if everybody took the full 9,000, that would certainly limit the number of businesses, but that's still a good number, 10. So, but that would be included, the architect would be included in their award.
Right. Yeah. Yes.
So it's already budgeted.
Yeah. Now we'll move on to the next item. I know when we come to it, but remember, we're going to be using some of this money in our Pedlet program, and Parklet and Pedlet program also. So, but I don't want to complicate.
Some of what money? Mr. Keller,
some of the $90,000 that's the 90 that's available to us.
Is that for both programs?
We're going to spread that among 2 programs. Yes.
Okay. But I think with respect to action, we need to handle this as 2 separate issues. especially since the
Correct.
first one has got an amendment on it.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, are there any other comments or questions for Mr. Kellogg?
Madam Mayor, this is Vice Mayor Vice Mayor Langfelter. I have a couple of questions for Gary, if I may.
Certainly, go ahead.
So, would there be any situations where we would have a business owner that had improvements requiring a building permit that would be $1,000 or less? And if so, can they use a handyman under state law rather than a licensed contractor?
Yeah, we didn't really do.
We
that,
didn't,
yeah.
we did not address that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I would have to research that.
I think in Arizona, the limit is $1,000. And then above $1,000, you have to use a licensed contractor. Below that, I think you can use a handyman. So that's one question I would have. The second question I have, if we're raising the limit to $9,000, I think if we were spending public funds, it needs to be in accordance with our Kingman procurement code. And I think if you look at our Kingman procurement code, anything that would be $1 to $4,999 in a grant, I think would be one written quote. I think that's what our code says. Anything that's $5,000 to $9,000 per our code, I think requires 3 written quotes. Written or verbal, I don't remember. But is that accurate?
That is accurate.
Okay, so those are my only 2 questions.
Unless they provide a written statement that says that there was no other qualified bidders in place. Miss Tina, I see, is logged on. She can speak to this even better than I can.
Yep, that is correct, Vice Mayor, and that is correct, Mr. Fogden. So if they are unable to obtain at least 3 written, we require written quotes, then they are able to use either 1 or 2 of the written quotes.
And they have to provide written justification for that as well?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Tina.
You're welcome.
I can jump in real quick on the handyman exception. Yeah, the Vice Mayor is correct. The handyman exception is $1,000. And I guess my assumption would be if that value is less than that, you wouldn't need a registered contractor. That may not be the policy question, but the legal answer would be you can operate under $1,000 exemption.
Well, I bring it up because when we first approved it, I walked around for about an hour with Sylvia downtown to some of the business owners, and there were a couple that had some smaller projects that they thought would come under $1,000, but they just couldn't get a licensed contractor to look at it because of the size of the job. So it sort of raised the question under state law, and would it make it easier to get those smaller jobs under $1,000 done if they could use a handyman? So I just appreciate you guys looking at it. Thank you.
We can write that in.
Yeah, we certainly could write that in.
Oh, we're still muted.
Oh, sorry.
So let me understand what we're writing in for purposes of the amendment. So less than $1,000 can be a handyman. The handyman can be used. Above 1,000, it takes a certified contractor, licensed contractor. And then what about the $5,000 breakpoint? Should there be a allowance for 1 quote if it's under 5,000 and 3 with a waiver if it's over? Is that the nature of this discussion, or is it more simple than that? Mr. Kellogg or Mr. Fogden?
Oh, I guess
Yeah.
I would, Ron.
So based on what the conversation would be, or that we've been having, what we would suggest is having, based on our city procurement code, is that anybody with a job that's over $5,000 would have to have 3 written bids, unless there's a specialty item where they would need to submit a letter stating that there was only 1 qualified contractor that could do the work.
An
And so
example.
go ahead.
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
Go
I
ahead.
was just saying, maybe an example of that exemption to a 3 quotes, maybe if a business wanted to throw up something that is neon, and we have that really neat neon shop downtown, that would maybe be a specialty item where they would be able to provide a quote and written justification where they couldn't find 3 quotes.
Yeah, that's a good example. Another example is if you have someone that has an old building that is working on the glass and they have old frames for their glass that require glazing. That's a talent that a lot of people do not have, and you're not going to find a lot of people to be able to bid on that type of work. So there are clearly times where people are going to need work done where they're only going to have one person or one contractor that can do the work. And so, you know, that exception is there for that reason. And so that just following those rules, I think, is really will clean this thing up.
So then I guess what we're saying is that the program will be modified to basically align with our procurement code.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good discussion. Any other comments or questions?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Counselor.
Well, first, I appreciate Councilmember Waite's comments and also our Vice Mayor's comments for helping clarify all this. And yeah, I think we once again, it has been mentioned that we need to refer back to the procurement code, and it sounds like there are exceptions available in that procurement code, so that's already covered. So as Manager Foggin just suggested, all we're doing is putting it back in alignment with the procurement code.
Yes, I think that's right. And I think seriously, at this point, we need, I would entertain a motion that is in favor of the program with the amendment to with a revision that it be aligned with our procurement code. Councilor Watkins.
I make a motion then, as the mayor just stated. How about that?
Oh, okay, I'll take it. Thank you, Councilor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Next, old business, B, is Parklets and Pedlets Incentive Program. In 2019, the City of Kingman implemented a Parklet Pedlet Program, PPP, as a part of the City of Kingman's vision and goal to have a successful downtown that serves as a hub for the arts, entertainment, tourism, and events. In continued efforts to assist small businesses, Economic Development Department, in partnership with Community Development, is proposing a Parklet Pedlets Incentive Program that includes 50-50 matching funds and consultation service from a local architect. Staff recommends approval. Mr. Foggin.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a huge change in this. As Gary's kind of already alluded to, we felt like in an effort to speed up this program and to help small businesses that are trying to stay afloat through the pandemic, that perhaps a cost share would be appropriate. And also, we know that as people have looked at Parklets, Pedlets, the idea is some help from a local architect certainly could be used. And so that's where we started from. Gary and Sylvia, anything to add to that?
Again, part of this was to help certainly incentivize and help those people out that where the Parklets and Pedlets would be beneficial. And it's actually any of the property owners on commercial property that front East Beale Street between 2nd Street and 6th, where those parklets certainly best fit. And so, again, one of the things that we'll have to take into consideration here is the procurement program. So we would need to modify it as we did the other one, and also, as it relates certainly to the quoting. And then part of this is the architectural fees. This is a 50-50 split, because, the merchants or the people that would take advantage of this is really something they would want to do. And so, it's really, really good for their business. And so that's really, and then the applications would go through the process with Sylvia and team looking at it, along with our friends down in planning and zoning. So this goes hand in hand on the inspection stuff. So we work together to actually come up with this final program on this. So.
Excuse me, Mr. Foggin, we have lost the mayor.
All right. Let's give her a second to see if she can get back on. The wind has been blowing hard, and it has affected some service, I know, so.
Ron, this is Vice Mayor Lingenfelter. I want to just say thank you for bringing this back. I appreciate the grant aspect of this now. I think the business owners downtown will as well. Hopefully they'll use it. Procurement wise, I think all of these parklets are going to be above $5,000. So that's pretty simple. And I think that it's a great social distancing tool. A lot of the businesses, the bars, the restaurants, the bars are closed now, but the restaurants are reduced seating. And so some additional outdoor seating will help them make up some of that lost indoor seating. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. And we had the same thoughts as we were looking at the program of, how much more important this idea and concept have become now in kind of the world we live in, and how great it's going to be in the future when we return to normal to have these. So it's kind of a win for the situation we're in right now and a win later. So. Did we get the mayor back on?
I'm back on. I am back on by phone. And so I'm listening. I'm trying to get back on the computer. I was kicked out. I'm sorry. I apologize. Microsoft kicked me out and restarted.
You gotta love when the computer has a mind of its own, Mayor.
That's one way. I would ask at this point I will listen. Well, let's see how that goes. I heard the last comments about this program.
So, Mayor, to you, it would be, does the council have any additional questions for Gary or Sylvia about the program?
Okay. Are there any additional questions about the Parklet Pedlets program?
I have a question, Mayor.
Please go ahead, Counselor.
Will you remind us, Manager Foggin, who's responsible if something's damaged or broken? Is it going to be the tenant or the city?
So I'll let Gary and Sylvia speak to that, since they've been working on this more intimately than I have. So go ahead, Gary.
Councilman, it's the tenant. It's their responsibility. It spells it out, and when we actually have the agreement for the grant on, what they can and cannot do. And so we really stayed really close to the guidelines used in planning and zoning on this. So yes, it is a tenant responsibility.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Gary, I heard you mention earlier that this also is budget. This is coming out of the same 90,000 that the facade improvement is from too?
That is correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure, clarify. Thank you.
Gary, this
Any
is
other
Vice Mayor
questions?
Lingenfelter. Last
Go ahead.
question. Sorry, Mayor Miles. This is
Please go ahead.
available on a first come, first served basis. Is that correct as well?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no further questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the Parklet Pedlets incentive program as presented.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the Parklet Pedlet program as presented. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to new business, a consideration of resolution number 5285, approving a minor amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030 by adopting the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan. KTH Consultant, applicant, and SDIP VP VB LLC, Kingman Development Partners LLC, also known as Sunbelt Development, JBS Investments LLC, and Lee E. and Gail M. Bruno, trustees, et al., property owners, have requested a minor amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030, known as Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan. The properties subject to rezoning comprise 25 parcels totaling approximately 1,323 acres, located generally north of Interstate 40 and east of the Vista Bella area. The City of Kingman Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on June 9, 2020, and recommended the approval of the minor general plan amendment as requested by a vote of 5-0. There is concurrent request to rezone RZ20-0004 most of the property within RSFG master plan that is being heard following this item. There were a significant number of comments received from residents in the Vista Bella area adjacent to the site in regard to proposed zoning changes immediately east of the neighborhood. This is detailed farther in the concurrent rezoning request. Staff recommends approval. Mr. Foggin.
Thank you, Mayor. We have Rich, who is going to present for you tonight on this item, and he will also be handling the second piece, which is item B. So go ahead, Rich.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me and see the screen. Is everybody able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
It's good.
Okay, good, great. So as the mayor mentioned, this is a minor general plan amendment for the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan. The developers involved are a part of the Sunbelt Development Group. The applicant is Kathleen Tackett Hicks. And the request is a minor general plan amendment known as the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan. The property consists of two large blocks of land located generally east of the Vista Bella neighborhood and north of the future Rancho Santa Fe Parkway I-40 interchange. And if approved, this amendment will facilitate the consideration of a concurrent rezoning request, RZ20-004 for the same property. So as I mentioned, this area is broken into two blocks. There's a northern block, which is the area closest to the Vista Bella area. The entire site comprises about 1,300 acres or 2 square miles of privately owned land parcels. The northern block is about 953 acres with 21 separate parcels, which are undeveloped at this time. The southern block is 370 acres, which is undeveloped except for a sand and gravel operation that is located on 2 parcels. And this slide shows the entire master plan area with the various land uses indicated on the map, which we'll go over a little bit more detail in a moment. So the surrounding land use for this site, to the north, we have the Kingman Airport and Industrial Park, which is actually in Mojave County, owned by the city, but in the county. It's zoned AD, which is an airport development district. To the east is a state trust section and private land, which is vacant and zoned rural residential. To the south is vacant land, also zoned RR. And to the west, as I mentioned, is the Vista Bella area zoned R110. And also includes 2 schools zoned R2. The land use surrounding the southern block, it's mostly surrounded by rural residential zoning, except for the portion south of I-40 near where the interchange would occur. That area is zoned C2 and C3. The area was annexed in 4 separate annexations that occurred between 1991 and 2009. The northern block has had a series of master plans approved with hard zoning over the years, or 3 altogether, prior to this, this proposal. The first one was 1996 with the Vista Bella master plan, which was expanded in 2002. And then we had a new plan approved in 2005, which was the Celebrate Homes master plan. All of these plans featured a mix of residential and commercial development with large golf courses. No development has occurred in the southern block, however. This slide shows the current general plan 2030 land use designations. The sort of orange areas are medium density residential. The green areas represent recreational parks and open space, which under the old plan where it was generally for a golf course. Red areas are commercial, and there's a little bit of light colored area, light gray area that's industrially zoned. Physical characteristics and drainage, it's mostly native desert vegetation, traversed by several washes. There are a few flood zones in the area. The southern block is significantly impacted by the Rattlesnake Wash, and this is incorporated into the general plan with a large area of open space that could be used for recreation, passive recreation, or perhaps sports fields. The existing infrastructure and streets in the area, Airway Avenue, Diamond Joe Road, and Prospector Street all abut the boundary of the site. Within the site itself, there's limited infrastructure. There are some power lines, but limited as far as water and sewer, which would have to be extended into the area. We posted the site in 2 locations back in May, announcing both the P&Z Commission meeting as well as the City Council meeting. We posted closest to the Vista Bella area, which is the only populated area immediately adjoining the site. We sent the notices to the property owners within 300 feet on May 18th, again announcing both the P&Z meeting as well as the council meeting, and advertised in the paper. Prior to the P&Z meeting on June 9th, there was 27 written comments from the public in the Vista Bella neighborhood adjacent to the site. Those comments were emailed to the P&Z Commission prior to the meeting. There were 4 additional comments that were received following the meeting. And then this afternoon or this morning, I believe you were all emailed additional comments that the city clerk's office had received subsequent to the P&Z Commission report being completed. All the comments that are referenced in the commission reviewed, as well as the 4 that came afterward, are in the actual P&Z Commission report. And then the additional comments were, as I said, emailed to you this afternoon. Generally, there was a desire to maintain the open space zoning located east of the Vista Bella, or perhaps allow the same zoning and same densities as in the Vista Bella area. There has been some resolution to these concerns, including additional dedication of open space and a change to the proposed zoning to the east. And we'll address these issues in more detail as part of the zoning case. It really wasn't part of the general plan amendment case, but it is addressed in the zoning case which follows. There were comments from the city engineer and Moline County Flood Control that were incorporated into the report. There are no other comments or objections received. So again, the overall concept is that this was the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan. It would provide an opportunity for significant additional light industrial and manufacturing industrial land uses along the future Rancho Santa Fe Parkway between I-40 and the Kingman Area Industrial Park. The parkway is envisioned as providing an alternative direct access route from the airport to an industrial park to I-40 once the interchange is completed. The vision would also be to provide additional infrastructure for industrial uses as well as commercial and residential land uses in the area. The development will also provide an opportunity to mitigate some of the drainage issues in this area that I previously mentioned. There was an analysis and determination made that the request does not actually trigger any of the criteria stated in the municipal code that would require this to be treated as a major amendment. Thus, it's able to be heard at this time. So this chart shows the existing and proposed land use designations, existing general plan on the left and the proposed amendment on the right. It does show that you'd be going from a largely residential development to largely industrial type land uses in the area. There would be a significant decrease in the amount of residential density that would be possible within the area. There'd be a moderate increase in redistribution of land designated for commercial development. Also, open space designated areas will be decreased. However, that will be in favor of trails, pathways, park space, and passive recreation in the drainage basins that I mentioned earlier in lieu of a semi-private golf course. Also, the parkland that the Sunbelt is dedicating or has dedicated to the city on the north side of Airway is not subject of this general plan amendment nor the rezoning request, since that's already city property. So that's this open space number does not reflect that park space in the area. We reviewed the minor amendment for consistency with the existing general plan, which is required under the municipal code. And we looked at all the different elements that exist within the code that you see there: land use, growth area, redevelopment, public facilities, circulation, parks, recreational, open space, cost of development, and environmental planning. Some of the general highlights of the plan would be this plan would, as I mentioned, significantly expand the industrial land uses for employment centers. There would be opportunities for expansion of infrastructure. They would have the provision for additional alternative access to the airport. There is the proposed trail system for recreation in the area that would come out of this plan. And actually would be result in overall water use reduction, because you'd be reducing the amount of land that would be used for residential development, which actually uses more water than typical industrial development. It was generally found that the amendment is consistent with existing policies and objectives and will further the public health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Kingman. And so based on those findings within the report, Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the minor general plan amendment as requested. And that recommendation is reflected in resolution 5285, which is before you this evening for your consideration. And with that, I'll be happy to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggles. Does anyone on the council have questions for Mr. Ruggles?
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead, Counselor Waite.
Thank you. With respect to the residential zone being reduced, did we have any current landowners that voiced opposition, claiming that they may want to develop residential, or did we have any opposition so far?
Well, there was opposition to some of the zoning proposals that's the subject of the next case, namely the area of open space, which is immediately east of Vista Bella, which is currently zoned O. We didn't have any objections from any persons that would be interested in developing their own land for residential purposes within the plan area, because the developer either owns all the parcels or is working in partnership with those property owners.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Ruggles? Okay. Hearing none, I would go ahead and ask for a motion and to approve Resolution 5285 and the minor amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030 by adopting the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan.
Hey, Mayor, we just want to make sure we acknowledge the open meeting nature of this and the lack of having that ability to have people in person, and the fact that we have received those comments prior to the start of the meeting. And I just wanted to make sure that was clear on the record. So.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper. And I thought also that we might be discussing some of that in discussion.
Yeah.
If you're getting a motion.
Mayor, this is Ron. Just as an adder to that, we believe that the public comment, the written comments that we received are really part of item B. So that
yes,
portion again will be addressed with that section or with that item.
Mr. Foggin, that was certainly how I understood it too, given that the item B deals with the O zoning change, I think, and that one is where I think most of the comments relate. Am I right?
Correct.
So that's why I went ahead and moved on item A. But we do recognize there have been many comments, and I think we'll have a bigger discussion of that on item B. But having said that, at this point, I have no, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 5285.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you. Was a second from Councilor Nelson. I see your name on my screen.
Yes.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve resolution 5285, approving a minor amendment to the Kingman General Plan 2030 by adopting the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. We'll now move on to new business item B, consideration of ordinance number 1903, rezoning certain property located within the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan as adopted by resolution number 5285. KTH Consultant Applicant and SDIP VB LLC, Kingman Development Partners LLC, also known as Sunbelt Development, JBS Investments LLC, and Lee E. and Gail M. Bruno, trustees et al., property owners, have requested the rezoning of certain property located within the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan. The properties subject to rezoning comprise 25 parcels totaling approximately 1,248 acres located generally north of Interstate 40 and east of the Vista Bella area. The current zoning within the subject site is a mixture of R16, R18, RR, R2, O, C1, C2, and I1 districts. The proposed zoning changes would eliminate certain areas within the RSFG master plan currently zoned R16, R18, and RR, reduce areas zoned R2, C1, and O, expand areas zoned C2 and I1, and add areas zoned R110 and I2. City of Kingman Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on June 9, 2020, and recommended the approval of this rezoning request with 3 conditions by a vote of 5-0, which included a requirement to create an area of R110 zoning adjacent to an existing 60-foot wide drainage parcel to buffer the Vista Bella neighborhood from area zoned R2 further east. This condition was added in response to written comments expressed by residents in Vista Bella over density and the loss of area zoned O residential open space. A revised zoning map in accordance with the recommendations is included. There are also 2 options for the council to consider regarding the timing of the issuance of building permits in commercial and industrial areas that the council will need to consider. Staff recommends approval with option 1B. Mr. Foggin?
Yes, Mayor. Again, I'm turning this right over to Rich to walk you through the PowerPoint.
Get up.
Is this up? Slide. Okay, hopefully you can see the screen.
We can see it.
Okay. I'm trying to advance the slide right now.
Try resharing it.
Okay, now it seems to be working.
You got it.
Okay, sorry. Once again, this is the Sunbelt Development Site. This action would be approving hard zoning within the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan area. It would change the current zoning by reducing areas zoned C1, R2, and O, eliminating areas zoned R16, R18, and RR, expanding areas zoned C2 and I1, and adding areas zoned R110 and I2. And the area subject to rezoning is approximately 1,248 acres. It doesn't want to advance. I'm trying to advance the screen. Okay. The property again consists of 2 blocks. The northern block, which you can see here on the screen, this is the area again closest to Vista Bella. Mostly it's I1 and I2 zoning to the east and to the north, with buffers of R2 zoning, R110 adjacent to Vista Bella, which I'll get into in a moment. There's also, as you can see, an area of O for the city park shown on the map, but is not actually subject of this action as the city owns the property already. And then within the southern block, as you can see here, it's a mixture of I1, an area zoned for open space, which would be double as a retention area, possible sports fields, and other passive recreation, I1, I2, and some C2 joining the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway interchange. And then this is the overall plan showing both blocks. This map shows the current zoning of the site. As you can see, the area was hard zoned. At the same time, as the Celebrate Homes Master Plan was adopted in 2005. A lot of areas zoned O for the proposed golf course at the time, as well as some commercial zones, and R2 for residential development, as well as some other R1 districts. And then the southern part was mostly rural residential with an area of I-1 adjacent to I-40, just east of the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway interchange. As mentioned in the previous item, we did send notices to the surrounding property owners. We did receive comments from the public associated with the P&Z Commission meeting in June 9th. And these comments were emailed to the P&Z Commission prior to the meeting. Some additional comments were received following the meeting, and then you received additional comments in your that were emailed to you from the clerk's office that showed up after the commission report was completed. Generally, these concerns expressed by the residents were desire to maintain 24 acres of O recreational open space zoning located east of Vista Bella. Alternatively, there was also desire to have a buffer of R110 zoning immediately east of Vista Bella to buffer that area for R2 zoning. There were concerns expressed over potential higher densities that could occur in the R2 district versus the Vista Bella area, which is currently zoned R110. There were no other comments or objections received from any department or agency. And this is just a close-up map of the existing zoning in the area. Vista Bella there is kind of in the center of your screen. There's a 60-foot wide drainage parcel between the eastern side of Vista Bella and the Sunbelt property to the east. The area is zoned O on this map as part of that Sunbelt property. This is the subject of much of the letters that were received from neighbors in the area concerned over loss of that areas that zoned O. This is the existing proposed zoning designations within the master plan, and the difference. So the column in the far right shows that you would all the areas that are presently zoned rural residential would go away. Areas zoned R16, R18, and R2, 554 acres would be reduced to about 100 acres of R2 zoning. There would be the addition of the R110 zoning that I mentioned is a buffer to the east of the drainage parcel that I showed you in the previous slide. That would give them about a tier of lots similar to the Vista Bella neighborhood to the west. They would see a decrease in the C1 zoning, about 30 acres, but an increase in C2 zoning of 92 acres, so a net increase in commercial zoning in the area. You'd also have 96 acres of I1 zoning that would be increased, and addition of over 716 acres of I2 heavy industry zoning in this area. Presently, there's only 4 acres of I2 zoning in all of the city of Kingman. So you go from 4 acres to 716 acres. So, and as I mentioned, the open space zoned areas will be decreased. However, it'll be in favor of trails, pathways, park space, and passive recreation in drainage basins in lieu of the semi-private golf course. And when considering zoning changes, findings have to be made by the P&Z Commission on each of these items. The first finding has to do with whether there's a demonstrated need for uses permitted in the proposed zoning districts that are being considered. As I mentioned, there would be a significant gain, about a threefold gain in industrially zoned land in the city from 475 acres to 1,288 acres. There'd be a net gain of 62 acres of commercial land. Expansion of the industrial and commercial land uses and zoning as employment centers would be positive for the long-term growth and financial stability of the community. So a need for these uses in these, that would be allowed in these districts can be demonstrated. The O zoning would be decreased, as mentioned, but again, that was mostly for a semi-public golf course, and the new proposal would be for a drainage basin with the potential for sports fields, as well as trail and open space buffer system between the industrial and commercial zoned areas and the residential areas. And as I mentioned, there also be the addition of the park space already dedicated to the city, but is not a subject of this case tonight. The residential zoning generally will be decreased. However, the R2 zoning does allow single family development. It does allow some duplex and triplex type development as well. Additionally, over 10 acres, as I mentioned, of the R2 that was originally abutting the Vista Valley area is now in response to concerns by the residents. The developer did respond by changing that request to R110, which would be the same zoning district as the Vista Valley area currently has. The second thing to consider is the suitability of the proposed zoning district compared to the current zoning districts. This would change this area from being primarily anticipated to be residential to primarily industrial. The future Rancho Santa Fe Parkway is envisioned as providing an alternative direct route to the airport and the industrial park from I-40, with truck traffic accessing the industrial park to the north. The expansion of the industrial zones to the south along this route makes sense from a planning perspective. Under the current zoning, there's a significant amount of residential zoning that would be near the Kingman Airport, directly under the flight path, and industrial zoning would appear to be more suitable for those areas closest to the airport. There is a commission recommended condition for your consideration that would include the provision of an navigation easement to be placed on areas zoned R2 north of Airway Avenue to address those overflight concerns. The expansion of the commercial industrial land uses as employment centers while still allowing for additional housing opportunities in the area seems to be a suitable balance to zoning in the area. And then finally, compatibility with the surrounding area and the community. As mentioned, there are industrial zones, commercial zones, but those are located further to the north and east away from the residential areas so as to reduce potential conflicts. One concern we did have was the timing of the development of the commercial and industrial zoned areas. We wanted to avoid a situation where there'd be heavy truck traffic on Airway, the thought being that we want those areas developed only once there is access to the freeway via the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway. The commission did recommend not allowing development in commercial industrial areas that are zoned that way until a notice to proceed is issued by ADOT. The developer has asked this condition, however, to be tied to a development agreement instead that would be entered into with the city of Kingman. There are multiple comments from the Vista Villa residents concerning R2 zoning, replacing a 24-acre area zoned O located east of the neighborhood. The commission recommended an area of R110 zoning adjacent to the 60-foot wide drainage parcel to buffer the Vista Villa neighborhood from the areas zoned R2 further east. In response to this comment, the developer has provided a revised map and legal description, which would create an area of 150 feet in width and about 10 acres in size that would be rezoned to R110, which will be the same district as the Vista Villa area. The result would be a potentially less dense area immediately adjacent to Vista Bella. Additionally, the developer had another meeting with a neighborhood representative, Candace Hofstadter. The developer is, as a result of that meeting, the developer is willing to dedicate a 20-foot wide parcel along the east side of the drainage parcel that the city already owns that could be used for drainage purposes and as a trail by residents. And this slide shows, the lower left slide shows the area that would be proposed for a 110 zoning, 150 feet wide, joining the drainage parcel that already exists. And in addition to that, they would propose a 20-foot wide dedication, again, adjacent to the existing 60-foot wide parcel. And that dedication to the city could then be used for drainage purposes, open space, trails, that sort of purpose. So on this slide shows the existing, or I'm sorry, the P&Z Commission's recommendation for the zoning case. One was, as I mentioned, the issuances of building permits would be in the commercially zoned areas would be, and the industrial zoned areas would be tied to the notice to proceed that's made by ADOT in association with the interchange. Second condition was the abrogation easement for areas zoned R2 north of Airway Avenue prior to development. And condition 3 was would be providing a tier of R110 zoning adjacent to the 60-foot wide drainage channel located east of Airway Avenue. I'm sorry, located east of Vistabella between Airway Avenue and Diamond Joe Road. So the staff recommendation, based on the P&Z Commission's recommendation and the developers' concern regarding the timing of development within the commercial industrial areas, there are two options for the commission's, or sorry, for the council's consideration. Option A, and you'll need to make a motion for one of these options. A would be that the development in the commercially zoned areas and industrially zoned areas would not occur until a notice to proceed has been made by ADOT. Or B, and this is what the developer's preference is, it would not occur until the developer and the city of Kingman enter into a development agreement to construct the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway interchange. Second condition you're already familiar with the avocation easement. And the third condition, the additional condition would be 2 Ordinance 1903, would be a 20-foot wide parcel shall be dedicated for drainage and trail purposes along the eastern side of the existing 60-foot wide drainage parcel located between Airway Avenue and Diamond Joe Road. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggles. That is an excellent presentation, and I just want to comment that I appreciate all the work that you and your team have done, and also the citizens who have come forth with so many comments, and the developer who's sat down at meetings and has made all of these revisions in planning this, and that really is a testament to everyone's goodwill in trying to make this work, I think. So with that said, I would ask the council, do you have questions or comments for Mr. Ruggles?
Mayor?
Oh, you go ahead.
Please go ahead.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor Staley.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment because I'm the liaison for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And just to let everybody know, there was a lot of discussion on this item, especially because we had received so many emails from the property owners. And I thought that the commission did a really great job making some compromises in order to address those concerns. And like Rich had mentioned, they were concerned about the open space. And so it was decided that there would be the 60-foot easement right directly behind their homes, If you went out there and looked at it, there was a little road that followed that. And then they also made the compromise that instead of having R2 backing up right against their properties, that there would be one more row of R1, and then it would move into R2. And so I just wanted to mention that they had done a really good job to try to address those concerns for the community. And then I also wanted to bring up the fact that I hope everybody saw the email this morning from the applicant, Kathy Tackett-Hicks, and the fact that she did offer to meet with the property owners right after the planning and zoning meeting. And then they have added on the extra 20 feet and the trails. So from what I saw at the planning and zoning meeting, you know, it looks like everybody, like the mayor had said, has worked really hard to find some good compromises so that everybody will be happy with this outcome.
Thank you, Counselor. And I should add my thanks also to the commission for doing heavy lifting on this process. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I do have a quick point of clarification and then a follow-up question, if that's okay.
Certainly. Go ahead, Counselor Waite.
Thank you. And so the clarification that I am seeking deals with option, I believe it was option A, wherein it was suggested that notice to proceed would have to be granted by ADOT. So my only question to that is, are we to assume that ADOT would only give notice to proceed after the entire project is completed? Or, because I imagine that the developer wants to talk to the city in order to kind of proceed in tandem. So like finish their project at the same time that the roads are, you know, basically constructed is my guess, is which, you know, makes sense to me. But the question is, would ADOT not give notice to proceed until after ADOT's project is fully completed?
Good question. Mr. Ruggles, or?
Perhaps Ron can answer that one.
Yeah, I can. I'm just trying to get a word in. Thank you. I talked with Mr. Linhart when this originally went to the Planning Commission. The Sunbelt Development folks had no issues with the language. And after it had gone to the Planning Commission and they were in the process of the meeting, it occurred to the Sunbelt folks that the language really would put them behind, and they needed to be, they would be better served if they tied this to the development agreement that we're working on with, rather than anything that ADOT is doing, because they recognize that ADOT, for one reason or another, could slow down the process. And so they know where they are with the development agreement, so they were more comfortable basing it at the development agreement level.
Thank you, Mr. Foggin.
Okay.
Counselor Waite?
Yes, thank you. Just one final question, and this I maybe should direct it to Councilmember Scott Staley. But you had mentioned that there were two concerns. I mean, it was brought up several times that there were at least two concerns. One of them being the acreage that was designated as open, and the other R110. And you mentioned that the Planning and Zoning Commission, that they compromised really well. And so my question is, do we have any indication from the members who, I guess, expressed their concerns, you know, just the residents, if their concerns were completely addressed by this compromise, or do we know that?
I'll probably let Rich talk about this because he did mention it, but in the emails that we received today, it did say that after Kathy Tackett-Hicks had met with their sort of community spokesperson, that they were able to fine tune some things, and that was including keeping the trail that runs along the wash, which actually leads you right to the park, and that'll be a really nice feature. But I'm sure Rich could tell you a little bit more.
Yeah, it's my understanding anecdotally from Kathy Tackett Hicks is that at least, I believe it was Candace Hofstetter, as well as Mr. Bohuniak, who owns the last house on Airway Avenue, were pleased with the outcome. But I don't have anything in writing that says that. So I'm going on her word and her experience.
Thank you, Mr. Ruggles. Any other comments or insights or questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Watkins.
thank you. I appreciate all the questions and answers that and all the information that Rich has given us too. I like some of the rezoning, the industrial stuff, especially as it moves out towards along the railroad track and farther out, going out towards the airport. And I don't have the answer to this either, but I just pose the question. As we drop into Kingman, what is it preferred for us to see? Residential and nice, beautiful homes along, obviously with a buffer, there's landscaping between that and the freeway. For example, that part that's along I-40 there. Or do you want industrial? I don't know. I just, like I said, I throw that question out there. For that one section where it's I-1 gray along the freeway there. It's one thing to have C2, C3, shopping centers and that kind of stuff. But industrial along the freeway where we want people to see, I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Councilor Watkins. I don't know if council members have a response to that. I think it's a great observation and question or concern. If I heard you right, Mr. Ruggles, some of these areas are in the flight paths of our airport and really light industrial, and my understanding is it's very light industrial and will look actually not like our thoughts about any kind of smokestack industries. This will be light industrial, warehousing and whatnot. So, but Mr. Ruggles, is it true that some of these areas are more complementary to being in the area of our airport and industrial park?
Well, it would be true that having residences directly under the airport flight path could be problematic, especially if the airport expands in the future, whether it's passenger flights or we get some other entity in there that uses the airport on a regular basis. That could be problematic. So you probably do want uses adjoining the airport that are not going to be troubled by noise. And so this plan would have the heaviest industry closest to the airport boundary, and then it would become less intense as you move away, which makes some sense. I also mentioned Councilman Watkins mentioned the I-1 zoning along the freeway. There actually is some area that's already zoned I-1 immediately north and east of the Rancho Santa Fe Parkway interchange location currently. This would be shifting it slightly and expanding it, but there is already some I-1 in that area.
Madam Mayor, this is Vice Mayor Lingenfelter. If I may, I think at least from what I remember, that it's always been envisioned that the Rancho Santa Fe interchange and the Parkway would be the new main entrance and exit into our expanding industrial park. As we see right now on the stretch of Route 66 that we have between the industrial park and the interchange at Andy Devine, there's a significant number of trucks on that road right now, and a significant number of driveways on that stretch of road right now. And that has caused a very dangerous situation where I think it's like 3 times the crash rate on that stretch of road on Route 66 between the industrial park and the interchange. And it's something that we were trying to get away from. And one of the main safety reasons that we took to ADOT as far as justification for the interchange. So I think on top of that, when you look, it's maybe on the 303 down in Phoenix, in Casa Grande, right off of the highway, and maybe certain places off of I-15 in northern Las Vegas. There is some industrial property where industrial companies or businesses, they want to be right on the highway. If they're in distribution, that plays very well to their industry. So I think it's a good fit, and I don't think that we want to get into another position where we create this really dangerous situation with a lot of trucks buzzing down that road and mixing them with a bunch of driveways and cars.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Good point. Any other comments? Go ahead, Counselor.
I just wanted to make one comment to Councilman Watkins on that. Is something to think about is if we don't annex east of this area, we will have no say over what Kingman looks like when you're coming in from that area, dropping into town, because that's currently county land. And so that's something to think about, when we're concerned about what does Kingman look like when you're coming in. We need to have more say over that.
Good point. Thank you. Other comments?
Madam Mayor, this is Vice Mayor Lingenfelter again. Is Gary Kellogg on the line still, Economic Development Director Kellogg? I only see 4 bubbles, so I don't see who else is on the call still. Is there anybody from Economic Development on the line? If not, then I want to ask my question.
I can speak to economic development.
Okay, well, I guess my question is, when you look at the current situation at our industrial park, where we have maybe a shortage of inventory of industrial buildings that meet modern standards, I just wanted to know if our economic development department would be glad to have this new private industrial park with hopefully some modern industrial building inventory to market, because I know they get a lot of project information forms from the Arizona Commerce Authority and other places. And if it would be a good fit for our targeted industries, but they don't have a building to put them in, I think a lot of times we're losing projects.
No, Councilman, I think you're absolutely right. Is that one of the things we certainly can do is have that as another arm of our economic development thing. Our park itself really is what you would refer to like as heavy industrial. So having that extra space available to us is key, because lately our inquiries are for, existing space that, like that a developer could create for us. So.
And Gary, you think that it would be a good addition to have this additional mix of light and medium and heavy industrial in Kingman?
I think it'll be good for us. It'll give us a broader spectrum to attract.
Thank you.
And by the way, Sylvia is 6 foot away from me, so.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions regarding item B? Well, again, I want to restate my appreciation for all the work that has gone into this for the citizens who have stepped up and had a spokesperson and worked with the developer and worked with the city. It sounds like it just is the ideal kind of collaboration to try to get it so that everybody is, if not happy, at least much more happy than when they started this process. So I hope that is the case. And I would entertain a motion on approving ordinance number 1903, rezoning certain property located within the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan as adopted by resolution number 5285.
And then, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we will need those actions identified as well.
That is true. I guess I should do that before I do the overall?
Whoever makes the motion needs to do that.
Okay, then I would ask that the motion person include recommending that this be approved along with approval of option 1B.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve option 1B of ordinance number 1903, rezoning certain property located within the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan as adopted by resolution 5285. And that is also with the conditions that were mentioned in the presentation.
Okay, so you're making an individual motion just for the option?
No.
Or is that, okay, it's combined.
For
Okay,
everything,
I think
for
I
the
got it.
resolution,
For
I
everything.
just wanted to make sure
Approving
that that was in there.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are voting on approving ordinance number 1903, rezoning certain property located within the Rancho Santa Fe Gateway Master Plan as adopted by resolution 5285 with the approval of option 1B, and that is the development agreement being the condition under which building permits can be considered. Is that right?
Yes.
Have I
I
got
will-
the motion correct?
So,
And you'll, okay, and
just to make
Councilor Nelson
sure
is
that
seconding.
Mayor, I'm sorry, just to make sure that we're clear and everybody understands the motion, if we could state the other items so that there's a comfort level. So the additional 20 feet that is part of that, I would really like to make sure that we've covered that as part of the motion.
Okay.
I don't have that in front of me. Go ahead, Councilor Staley. Perhaps you do.
I am looking, sorry, I'm going back right now looking for those 3 conditions.
Rich, you want to give everybody the conditions again, Rich?
Yeah.
Sure, we'll bring it back up on the screen here.
Thank you. That would be very
Perfect.
helpful.
This is resume slideshow. Sure. That'll work.
Just go to the slide. We can see it if you just click on it.
Yeah, it's this one here, 15. Okay. Can they?
Okay.
That doesn't really, oh, there it is, the additional conditions. So
Okay.
those are, go ahead, Counselor.
So I think I have this. I will amend my motion to approve option 1B of ordinance 1903 and to include the conditions listed here, which is the abrogation easement shall be placed on the R2 zone property north of Airway Avenue, further described in Exhibit 13, and that an additional 20 feet will be added to the previous 60-foot wide drainage parcel, and that will include the trail that the developer is going to fix in the areas that are not included in that 80 feet.
Well done. Did that cover all of the conditions you were thinking about, Mr. Foggin? I think that You got it. Okay.
Yeah.
I think everyone understands the motion. And Counselor Nelson, do you still have that second?
I will still second, yes.
Okay, then we have a motion and a second. And I would ask that all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ruggles, Mr. Foggin, and Mr. Kellogg. So that concludes Rancho Santa Fe. Now we'll move on to new business C, consideration of ordinance number 1902, rezoning of certain property to KC-PDD. A request from KX Ventures LLC, Ron Alt applicant, and Kingman Hospital Inc. property owner to rezone 4 parcels of land from C3 PDD, Commercial Plan Development District, HMMC-PDD, Wallapai Mountain Medical Center Plan Development District, and C2 Commercial Community Business to KC-PDD, Kingman Crossing Plan Development District. The rezoning to KC PDD would be consistent with the planned area for the future Kingman Crossing Boulevard I-40 interchange. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on June 9th, 2020. The commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning request with 5 conditions as outlined in the report. Staff recommends approval. Mr. Foggin.
Again, I'm turning this right over to Rich and his team.
Thank you.
Thank you. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm here to present for you tonight. My name is Gary Likeness. I've got a mask on. Everything is good.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Presenting for you zoning case 20-0002, a rezone to the Kingman Crossing Plan Development District. Hopefully you can all see my PowerPoint presentation here.
Yes.
Okay. In 2016, the city passed the ordinance 1806, which created the language in the zoning ordinance for the KCPDD, Kingman Crossing Plan Development District. And also at that time, that ordinance defined the boundaries of the Kingman Crossing Plan Development, which is the map before you on the slideshow areas. That is Interstate 40 that runs east-west there. And just south of it is the existing, you can see labeled KCPDD. The original KCPDD concept plan that was submitted shows the varied uses here, including retail office, retail, commercial, business park, auto mall, and various uses, multifamily included. The applicant, Ron Alt, and the KX Ventures is asking for property north of Interstate 40 to be rezoned from various zoning categories, and I'll list those. There's 4 of them. The C3 PDD Commercial Plan Development District, the HMMC PDD, the Wallapai Mountain Medical Center, the Plan Development District, and C2 Commercial Community Business. And the request is to go, of course, to the KCPDD Kingman Crossing Plan Development District. The subject property that you see there is approximately 175 acres and is north of Interstate 40. and is bounded by, includes, Santa Rosa Drive on the north, Wagon Wheel Drive on the east, extending to approximately 640 feet east of North Sage Street. And you can see on the south of Interstate 40, were 76 acres and 52 acres approved for the KCPDD originally. Again, the proposed zone change, I should have had this slide up, shows that the various zones that are encompassed in the yellow boundary there, including the commercial, the Wallapai Mountain, the C2 current zones, and the request is to go to KCPDD. This would, with the KCPDD application, there's included a preliminary development plan, which I don't know if at this scale you can see 100%, but the information that was given to you, you should be able to zoom in and get a better idea of what's being proposed there. Again, a mix of commercial uses, including, well, business park, retail, movie theaters, and again, various other commercial uses. The 2030 general plan for the city has the subject property is in the red boundary there. The brownish color, I guess, is designated as regional commercial, and the reddish area to the southeast is community commercial, which both these categories do allow for the various commercial uses, including the, which would be appropriate, the KCPDD. Here is a map showing existing utilities. Utilities include sewer and water. Sewer does not extend all the way through the development, but with the development, there will be a lot of infrastructure improvements made, but utilities are available. And again, transportation, the main portion of this, or main emphasis of this KCPDD, is the proposed interchange onto Interstate 40. These are some site photos we took while we posted signs. Not much to see, just general landscape. The analysis, wanted to mention briefly the intent of a PDD, and that is to create a zone that increases compatibility with within itself and with neighboring properties. You can have a better compliance with the general plan, as you can have modified areas that complement what's being called for as far as goals and objectives in the general plan. The PDD districts allow departures from provisions from specific zone classifications and standards. And the real key is that the PDD requires an adopted development plan, which will steer the development as the project moves forward. The intent of the KCPDD, pulled from the actual ordinance, is to provide development and services for the needs of the Kingman Crossing interchange, to increase compatibility between commercial and non-commercial uses, and to adopt the development plan. Need for the uses permitted in KCPDD. Mentioned earlier the various commercial uses, and these will support the new interchange, and with the new interchange, the creation of the need for these commercial and residential uses will surface and be there. Suitability and compatibility. The KCPDD accommodates the growing needs of the community, particularly if there is an interchange developed at that site. The KCPDD will limits the truck-oriented land uses. So truck stops and truck repairs, those sorts of things might be more appropriate for possibly an interchange to the east. The KCPDD will include design standards that are above and beyond what we have in our standard commercial zones. And then also with the KDPDD for suitability and compatibility, this particular development plan is including large lots to the west, which will help buffer uses with the residences to the west. These large lots are targeted for potentially offices, including standalone offices such as dentistry, regular business offices. This was a repeat. Conformance with the general plan, another finding that we need to make, and that is the general plan, it does comply with the general plan map, which is the critical portion of that. And the proposal promotes orderly growth that supports a variety of land uses. It encourages a planned mixture of land uses and encourages that nodal development with the interchange. The recommendation is from the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve the requested KCPDD zone, and with 5 conditions of approval. The first one is in regards to the timing of the zoning, and that would be with the issuance of a notice to proceed from the Arizona Department of Transportation and the beginning of construction of the actual interchange. The second would be the issuance of building permits would also be, would not occur until the notice to proceed has been issued and beginning of the interchange has begun. Number 3, the final development plan, whether completed as a comprehensive submittal, which will be required as they move forward, they'll have to submit final, more detailed development plans. This condition makes it more clear that the final development plan can be plural, and that includes phases. And these would include further detail of internal circulation, vehicular circulation for pedestrians and bicycles and vehicles. Number 4, it is recommended that the final development plan incorporate potential pedestrian trails or paths that might extend through the development to the new interchange. There's been interest from a development to the north that they might be interested in connecting a potential trail to the south, basically just north of the interchange. And so that condition would encourage that. And then finally, the development plan, again, may be submitted in phases, and such phases for clarification will be considered phase development plans and shall follow the approval process for the final development plans as outlined in the zoning ordinance. With that, I stand for questions.
Thank you so much. I just unmuted myself. Are there questions or comments regarding this presentation?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Watkins.
and maybe Ron can chip in on this too. On the last thing that we just voted on for Sunbelt Development and Company, we went with option B, which there were 2 different options there. One was ADOT or was Kingman. In
Right.
this one, we have number 2 has the first, which is basically the same wording as option A was in the last one. Why would we make any difference there? Why would we include this one? Basically, it's option A. It's almost a copy of option A. Why would we include it in this one and not give them the freedom like we did in the previous one?
Good question. Who's going to answer that?
Well, I'll start and then Rich or Gary can weigh in. The developer didn't ask for any different language. from this, or we've already got the development agreement signed with KX Ventures, and the applicant didn't ask for any changes to it.
Okay.
Gary, did you have something different on that?
I would just mention that the interchanges will be a huge benefit to the community. But until that time, we're trying to be conservative with allowing a large amount of commercial without proper transportation infrastructure in the area. And that would be the reason why that condition even existed in the first place, is to avoid that glut of commercial with no access to the freeway. That would be my understanding.
Gary, did the applicant have any comments regarding that item?
No, they did not.
This is Vice Mayor Langenfelter. I have a question to follow up on that. And my question is, what developer would ever build any sort of commercial without transportation infrastructure to get to it? It doesn't make any sense to me. And so I guess my question would be, what would be the harm if we just left condition number 2 out, like Watkins was talking about, Councilor Watkins was talking about?
I agree.
Because it doesn't make any
Number 1 and number 2 are
really, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's not going to be a developer that builds any sort of commercial space if you don't have transportation access to it. Or am I wrong?
Go ahead, Gary.
I would just, first of all, number 1 and 2 conditions are very similar. So if you're looking at number 2, you might want to look at number 1 as well. But they do have access, limited access from Airway and Santa Rosa, and there could be development that occurs that potentially exceeds the standards that we would look for coming across those roads. Whereas we'd have this sea of commercial development or commercial zoning that would be more appropriate for an interchange. That's the intent of those 2 conditions, at least. Not saying that they can't be modified or removed.
But isn't this development agreement have specific timelines that they have to meet? So they do have incentive to get the interchange done.
This is Mayor Miles. Mr. Foggin, I'd like you to clarify that timeline, because my understanding is with the pandemic and the things that have happened, some of this has been at least brought into question, the timelines, not the agreement. But could you clarify that?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, when we first got the development agreement completed, one of our recommendations to the developer and to the hospital were to take these steps early so it wasn't slowing them down. So we're happy to see this actually proceeding, because it was recommended a number of months ago that this be considered now. The most recent communication that we've had from the developer was that in March, when the president had declared the state of emergency. Stop muting me, Annie.
I hear you now.
Yes. So when the state of emergency was declared by the president, the developer looked at the agreement, said that that was part of the agreement, which it was, to be able to push pause. So that's really where the agreement is right now. We've not had a follow-up email or correspondence from the developer, other than to see this moving forward, which we're very happy to see, because like I said, it was recommended early on that this be taken on sooner than later. So it wasn't, when the developer was ready to move forward, that the zoning wasn't a hurdle or a speed bump in what they were wanting to do.
Okay, so what you're saying is we're happy to see the cohesive plan development district being created because it brings all the properties into compliance with a certain vision. But also, I am concerned because of the pause that anything could start being developed because of the citizens there with a lot of truck traffic down Airway in Santa Rosa or that area, unless we know that the construction of the interchange is going to happen at that time. Is that the reason that those two are up there, 1 and 2?
Mayor Miles?
To make sure that business permitting and building of commercial properties doesn't take place until we know that we're not going to overload Airway.
Go ahead, Gary.
I would just like to mention that the language here is pulled from the existing C3 PDD language when it was approved. So if you're kind of wondering where the language came from, C3 PDD was approved. It included that language for timing. And yes, I mentioned that to avoid a concentrated amount of commercial unlimited road access while the interchange is not existing or even proposed to be built at some point, that would be a problem. And then to try to rezone it back to residential or something would be a huge hurdle.
Thank you. And I think that's my concern because of the pause. I think I would have no concerns except that we're not sure, at least if I understand the situation, we're not sure the timing of when this is going to move forward. Is that right, Mr. Foggin?
That is correct.
Go ahead, Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Manager Foggin, so 2 things really. So on this point on the timing, with the pandemic, I assume that it falls under one of the general terms and conditions like force majeure or something like that, an act of God where it creates this pause in all of the deadlines into the agreement. Is that correct? And that'll need to be reestablished at some point in the future. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is absolutely correct.
Okay. And so with that said, in reading the terms, condition 1 really looks like it comes down to conditional zoning versus hard zoning. And, you know, I know a lot of finance partners, but probably a lot of retail big box stores also, they typically don't like conditional zoning. They like to see hard zoning. And this looks like in number 1, that it's actually not going to be rezoned to the planned development district until we receive, or the project receives a notice to proceed from ADOT. I think it feels strange to tie it to that, because they might be already shopping around for pre-leasing. Have you heard anything from the developer on that?
We have not heard any, at least from the AD side, we're not aware of any conversations that would be moving this property forward currently.
Okay.
Our team is constantly looking for folks and trying to send them to this property as an option into the future.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with everything that's happening with retail and the push to online, I would think that we would want to eliminate, and I only bring it up because we would probably want to eliminate any hurdles that we could and make it easier on our business partner in this deal. And I just didn't know if they had any heartburn over this conditional zoning, over actually being able to go out and shop a hard zoning to say this is already hard zoned and you don't have to worry about it. It's not conditioned upon anything. But if you haven't heard anything from them, I won't bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, when we had this original language for, when Counselor Watkins asked about the Rancho property, when it originally went out to the developer, again, they didn't see a problem with it. It was only after it had been agendized and was in the meeting where they were like, wait a minute, this could hurt our timing. And they brought it to our attention. KX Ventures had these conditions. No one's reached out to me, and I have talked to Rich and his team, and we've not heard any concerns from the developer with these conditions. So again, we may be trying to solve a problem that the developer doesn't have a problem with.
Yeah, I think it's good discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foggin. Thank you, Vice Mayor. I agree with your assessment, Mr. Foggin, and would ask if there are any other questions or comments from councilors. Hearing none, I would entertain a motion on approval of ordinance number 1902, rezoning of certain property to KC-PDD. With the recommendations included. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion then that we accept, we approve ordinance 1902
with the 5 conditions as outlined.
with the 5 conditions that are outlined, correct?
Thank you. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilor Staley. We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 1902, rezoning certain property to KC-PDD with the 5 recommendations as outlined by our Planning and Zoning Commission. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries unanimously. Again, thank you very much to Planning and Zoning Commission for the heavy lifting, for our partners in the development agreement, and for everyone and our staff and everyone who's worked on that. We'll move on to new business D, City of Kingman land surplus. In May 1990, the City of Kingman voters approved the sale of 748.65 acres of land at the Kingman Airport and Industrial Park as part of Phase 1 in the Kingman Airport and Industrial Park to encourage industrial and airport growth. The proposed 1,813.4 acres, pardon me, surplus land in Phase 2 is city-owned property located in the Kingman Airport and Industrial Park, which includes portions of sections 24, 25, 26, 27, 33, 34, 35, and 36. Township 22, North Range 16 West, Gila and Salt River Base and Meridian, situated in Mojave County, Arizona. The complete description of the property is attached in Exhibit A, B, and C. In order to proceed with the disposal of land, Council must first declare the land as surplus, and then later adopt a resolution designating the election date and purpose. Staff recommends approval. Mr. Foggin.
Thank you, Mayor. Really appreciate the opportunity to bring this to you. Actually, we were pleasantly surprised by the timing of this. When we started looking at the requirements to sell this property, obviously, as I believe the council understands, we're going through a process with the FAA right now on a land release for this property. And that land release, based on the schedule provided by our consultant, is showing that we will have FAA approval for moving forward with being able to sell this property in April, probably more like May of 2021. So next year. And the state law reads that any property valued at $1.5 million or more has to be voted on by the community to be able to be surplused and sold. or to be sold. I guess the council votes to surplus it. And so we were, in looking at the process, thinking that we would have to have a special election in March or perhaps May of 2021 to be able to ask the people of Kingman to be able to sell this property once it was released by the FAA. And as we started looking at this, the timing, the cost, just weren't really matching up. So I talked with Annie, and one of the things that we found, Annie had put a kind of a placeholder in for an item in the November 2020 election that was going to be a placeholder for a proposed sales tax increase. You recall that we talked about that. That information was provided to the county, and as fate would have it, the county never removed that placeholder. And so what we end up with is the opportunity to actually be able to place this on the November ballot because we had that placeholder identified with the county and they never removed it. And so the one piece that we still weren't quite sure about was, would the FAA have a problem, or were we violating any FAA rules if we asked the citizens of Kingman to vote on selling this property before they had completed their release process. And so I reached out to Mike Williams. He's our manager, the FAA manager in our region, and just asked him, I said, Mike, is there any problem with us asking our citizens to sell this property prior to the FAA release? And he wasn't quite sure. And so he promised to get back to me. Well, Mike got back to me and we had a nice conversation. And the bottom line was that he had not found any rules or policies or procedures that would be broken, or we would be misstepping if we went through this process prior to the release. He did point out that it possibly could slow down the release if it was proved that the process wasn't followed fully, or that we were I don't want to circumventing is not the right word, that we would have to prove that we didn't misstep, and I asked him, do you think that there's a problem with us doing this? And he said no. And so I have an email confirming that there's no policies or procedures that we're breaking in the process. The land release can move forward as planned, and we can have the citizen approval prior to that. And that is really important because I think you've seen in my weekly report a whole bunch of activity that our ED team has been involved with. The number of calls that we've received in the last 2.5 months with regards to want or need of industrial property from companies has just skyrocketed. There was one day where we actually entertained 3 different companies looking for industrial property in Kingman. That's really exciting for us, and it's awesome. But one of the things that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to sell them property in this new area when the FAA releases it. And if we're not prepared to do that, then a company could end up waiting for an election by the people to be able to sell this property. So that's how and why it's coming to you now, and why I think I think several of you might be surprised, a little bit surprised to see this on the agenda. I just barely got the answer from the FAA, from Mike last week, to be able to put this on the agenda. But timing wise, we had to have it on the agenda for today. And then it has to be back on the agenda for a resolution, placing it on the November ballot, July 21st, to make all the deadlines. So that's really, that's where we are in the process. And we do have folks that have expressed interest in buying property in this 1,800 acres, which we're really happy about. They have been worried about the timing. I think this really solves some of the timing concerns that some of the companies have had that have looked at or have wanted to consider this property. The other piece that I would point out is that the cost to do a special election in March or May looks like, based on the estimates the county has provided to us, that the cost would be about $50,000 to run this as an individual election item. To put it on the November ballot will be under $25,000. So there's a substantial cost savings, as well as it gives substantial timing positioning to be able to sell this property as soon as the land is released by the FAA. And did I miss anything, Gary?
No, sir.
Mr. Foggin, that is really good news that all these pieces are falling into place very fortuitously. And so with that, I would ask if the council has any questions or comments for Mr. Foggin. Can you hear me? Am I being
You're coming through.
Okay, I'm coming through.
I would just
Go
have
ahead, Councilor Staley.
just one comment. I just wanted to thank staff for getting this put together in such short timelines, because this is really exciting. These are all these pieces that are just falling into place to start bringing in new industry to Kingman and bring new jobs here. So I just want to thank you. This sounds like fate, so we need to get this done.
It does, doesn't it? Oh, that's great. Any other comments?
Mayor Miles, Mayor Lingenfelter, I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to echo what Councilor Scott Staley had said. All these things that we're doing are really foundational, and it's changing the course of the future for Kingman. I mean, you think about in the future how powerful we're going to be with all this industrial land right off the interstate. And I mean, we could really be a powerhouse. So I appreciate all the staff's work. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other comments?
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Okay,
Councilor
I also wanted to thank the staff and Annie specifically. Thank you, Annie.
Annie, it sounds like you did some election ballot magic. So I add thanks to that. Okay, given that, I will ask for, I'll entertain a motion to approve the City of Kingman land surplus, or designation of the land as surplus.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Staley. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Councilor Nelson. We have a motion and a second to approve the 1,813.4 acres in Phase 2 as surplus. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Foggin, and for all the work of everyone, that's including yourself. That was very instrumental in getting this to us. Okay, we'll move on to department reports. The adoption of the building code report.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Foggin.
Yes. So one of the things that happens every couple of years, as you may recall, the code for building and how we build buildings changes and is updated. And so Chris Young and his team have been working on this, looking at what the changes are. And so we thought it was appropriate where we are in the process, to make a presentation and to let him share what he's finding, what they've been working on, and what kind of the timeline will ultimately look like for adopting our next, the next portion or the next round of our building code. So Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Foggen. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of council.
Good evening.
Short slide presentation. It certainly won't be as long as a planning and zoning presentation. We'll welcome questions. I'll get the slideshow up here. Everybody see that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, advance please. Okay, currently the city of Kingman, we operate and manage the building inspection permitting program under 10 ICC International Code Council codes, which are listed here. And you can see the current versions are the 2012 versions, other than the only code that's not a family member of the International Code, which is the National Electric Code, which is the 2011. And this presentation basically is requesting to move forward with the adoption to a more current version of the code of the 2018 editions, and also add into the 10 documents the 2018 International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, which is a new code, and adopt a newer version of the National Electric Code, which would be the 2017 edition. In the code adoption history, as Mr. Foggen mentioned, Kingman has historically been on a 6-year code change cycle or adoption cycle. The International Code Council, known as ICC, is on a 3-year code adoption cycle. So every 3 years, they adopt a new family version of codes. Currently, the 2021 codes are the most current version. The ICC recognizes codes within a 6-year code adoption cycle, which currently incorporates the 2015 codes through the 2021 codes. So the 2012, the current codes that we are on, will drop off. What that means is we will no longer be able to get technical assistance on interpretations of the code. We'll no longer be able to test and get certifications within the 2012 codes. So pretty much they become obsolete. With an adoption also would include amendments to Chapter 5 of the Kingman Municipal Code, and it also provides a great opportunity to look at amendments, cleanup, modifications to the Kingman Municipal Code. It's also in concert with the current land use code, the zoning ordinance update, which would march along about the same time to make sure that our land use codes are as consistent as possible with the building codes. Next slide. So some of the benefits of adopting a more current code. The 2018 construction codes are considered one of the best code change cycles since the 2000 edition, which was the original International Code Council edition. 2018 residential code represents an estimated cost savings of over $5,000 per residential home. And that's from an analysis that the National Home Builders Association puts out as part of every code adoption cycle. It also allows us to remain within the 6-year code change cycle, which provides that predictability for our customers, so they know that every 6 years we'll be looking at updating to a newer version of code. It allows the opportunity to involve our customers on potential code amendments that provide a positive benefit. And our customers are design professionals, the general public, the homeowner, the contracting community. And it also allows a great training opportunity for our stakeholders. Some of the frequently asked questions that we get during code change cycle is, once the new codes are adopted, am I able to submit under the previous code edition? Typically, a good model is to adopt. If you try to time it so the adoption takes effect at the first of the year, but then you have a 6-month implementation period, which allows the customer that 6-month window to transition. So if they're in the middle of a design under the 2012 codes, they can continue for a period of 6 months. And then make a drop dead date, if you will, of July 1st, for instance, which would also be in sync with our fiscal budget. Does a newer code version allow for more latitude options in construction techniques, materials, and workmanship? That's absolutely the most profound reason to try to keep the codes up to date. Most of the codes now, even in the 2018 versions, are more of a performance-based version of codes versus the old school prescriptive, meaning it tells you how to do it, and that's the only way to do it. When you move to a performance-based model, it gives the developer, the design professional, and the contractor an option to meet the intent of the code. It also incorporates what's known as ICC ESR, which is an evaluation services now that's linked to the newer models, that it was implemented under the 2015 codes, where you can go outside the code now and use other resources that are adopted and become part of the code. An example would be the unique membrane system they use in Kingman for residential house envelopes. That's actually an ESR approved model. Is there a cost increase associated with adopting a newer version of code? There's always benefits and always impacts. As I mentioned earlier, the 2018 codes are one of the most sophisticated, successful code change cycles. It represents a substantial cost savings in residential. Just a quick analyzation of the significant changes to the IRC. There were 25 benefits, meaning it's a benefit to the contractor, to our customer, with 9 impacts. And the International Building Code, which regulates the commercial development, there were 21 benefits with 10 impacts. And is there a major learning curve for design professionals, contractors, homeowners from the old code to the new code? Because we're on the 6-year code change cycle versus a 3-year, there's a little bit more of a challenge because design professionals typically will be updated on the codes every 3 years, so we skip a version, but we do a great job, staff does a great job in analyzing the significant changes from what happened to the 2015 version. So when we go in and start the training processes with our stakeholders, we capture what occurred in the 2015 code and carry that over into the 2018 code. So everybody is brought up to speed with the most current version that Kingman will be using. Next slide, please. So the plan moving forward, we're looking hopefully August, September-ish to commence the public outreach and the educational training. However, that is subject to the COVID-19 procedures because we obviously can't fill rooms with contractors and design professionals if we're still under this crisis. But that is the plan so far. October, we would like to receive and review any public comments on our draft amendments. November, present the proposed draft back to City Council via department report and adjust accordingly. And then in December, present the final draft to City Council for 2021 adoption with a 6-month implementation period. With that, it's the end of the presentation, and I'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, and sounds like we really are good at keeping up and updating our codes, but at a reasonable times. And so I would open this to the council for any comments or questions. And there are none. So you really did a great presentation. And thank you so much. I'm going to start my video. Since there are no comments or questions, I would, there's no action needed on this. And so I just want to extend my appreciation to the staff. And I know that it sounds like this is a really good year to move up to. And we want to stay current with what is best practices and certainly our codes. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, we'll move on to Murals Incentive Program. Mr. Foggett.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the kind of the third step in our effort to help improve our business areas. Obviously, we have some wonderful murals in our downtown, our historic downtown area. And we've participated recently with a mural. And when we first started talking about murals and about how to incentivize a program, we actually had combined signs and murals into a program, got to looking at that. Sylvia looked at some best practices and felt like the signs really belonged in the facade grant program. The program that you just approved has business signs in that now. So that actually leaves us just with murals. And so what I've asked Sylvie to do is to look at kind of what best practices are with murals and present that to the council just to see if we're on the right track. And so this portion will be presented by Sylvia Schaefer.
Bring her in, come on.
And
All right, so let me move and let's bring her in, okay?
Good evening. I'll try to keep it a little short. You can hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. So yeah, we did look into a Little Murals Incentive Program. I did review some areas around Arizona, and so this is obviously a first draft for you as far as what we were proposing. Basically, we have like a $20,000 budget for the program, and we were looking at a 50-50 matching fund with a minimum project amount of $1,000 and $2,000 for a maximum for each applicant. So initially, we were kind of looking at what downtown area maybe to start with. One suggestion from the planning department was maybe use the entertainment zone as a possibility for that. I don't really have a lot more that I brought up in here today, because a lot of it I did kind of use similar formats as like the facade and the parklet pedlet program, and then adjusted it for the murals program. So really, Mr. Foggin, do you have more that I'm leaving out? Because you gave a really good intro.
Well, thank you for that. No, I mean,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to steal your thunder. Just, you know, like Sylvia said, we wanted to give you a first blush at this to see if you thought that this would meet our needs. Obviously, we want to see more murals. We want to see we want to see good murals, and being able to help someone and guide them. You know, I think it was Councilor Wade at one point indicated that he wasn't sure what good art was until he saw it. Obviously, we want to make sure that when the city's participating with mural, we're getting what we hope to see in where it's being proposed. So that's really the mural program. So we'll be happy to take any suggestions, ideas, whatever.
Thank you, Mr. Foggin and Ms. Schaefer. And are there any ideas, suggestions, or whatever from the council?
I have one question.
Please go ahead.
Would it just be limited to walls, or could it be other surfaces? And what I mean by that is if you travel enough, sometimes you'll see interactive murals that are painted on the ground, or sometimes you'll see utility boxes or electric boxes that are painted to look like something other than the matte green or brown utility box. So would the program be applicable to only walls, or could some sort of an interactive ground mural be presented, or a mural that would change utility boxes into a piece of art?
Yeah, I think that's, I've seen the power, the transformer cases that have been painted. Those are really cool projects. The the interactive ground murals. I don't know ultimately how that would look. One of the things that we want to make sure is happening with the mural program is that the mural is sustainable over time, aka it continues to look good and be there for a while. We wouldn't want to invest with somebody in a mural and have it gone in 2 years, right? So I think those are things that we absolutely can look at and consider. Like I said, we looked at some best practices. I don't think that there's anything specific to the side of a building when we're talking about a mural. If someone's got an idea for a mural, I think we've got to be open to what that ultimately would look like and where it would be.
Well, what I would encourage staff to do is to go online and to do a little research. The ones on the ground that I've actually seen, they're really popular with kids. I mean, there's been plays on concept like Wizard of Oz and the Yellow Brick Road, where the kids are playing, they interact with it. And there's a lot of different other things that they do too. I don't know, I won't go into it, but plenty of information on the web. They're popular with kids on the ground, the ones I've seen.
Sounds good.
I'd like to just make one comment.
Go ahead.
So the only thing looking through this that I have is that you might want to look at increasing the maximum reimbursement as you're talking about, Mr. Foggin, that you want to see good art. To give you an example, the Main Street mural, if I remember correctly, cost around $6,000 just for the art. And then we had to pay for the other things like prepping the wall. We did pay to fly the artist here and those kind of things. So to get a piece of art like that is going to cost more than what we're allotting here. And then I would also recommend, if Sylvia, if you'd like, that the Main Street group did put together a really great list of the steps that they took in order to choose the piece of art, the artist. All the steps are in a PDF that was created that I'm sure Main Street would be happy to share with the city.
Thank you. And right, and again, a starting point, we can certainly look at increasing the share amount for sure.
Thank you, Minister Foggin. I agree. I think if we can increase our share amount and reduce the match, they can contribute more when it runs over into more expensive, because murals do tend to become very expensive, especially for the type of art that Main Street did and others. So that's a good idea. But I'm really glad to see this coming to us and coming to fruition, because we know that murals have added so much to our downtown already, and throughout the city, actually. Any other comments about the mural incentive program or questions? Hearing none, I'll move on to, and I just thank you, and thank you, Ms. Schaefer, you have a lot of programs that you're running there, and we really appreciate it, because this is how we contribute to small business success. And I just am really appreciative of what the city is doing, and to help all of our businesses to recover and be as successful as they can. I'll move on to announcements by mayor, city council member, city manager. And Manager Fagan, I'll start with you.
The only thing I have tonight, Mayor, is that we're beating the pants off of our sister cities in the census. Just so happy about that. I can't begin to tell you. We're reporting wise, we're about 72% the last report that I got. We've exceeded the 2010 census reporting numbers already, and that's before anybody's knocked on one door to do a census. So I gotta thank Sylvia and my census task force for all that they've done. We're not done plugging 2020 census. Amen. And just want everybody to know that our community's done a great job, and we certainly won't be left holding the bag when it comes to wanting to have our correct and fair distribution based on our population. So thank you. That's really all I had for tonight, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Councilor Watkins.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. As always, just want to thank staff and our city employees for all the great job that they do in keeping our city running. And of course, encourage everybody to be safe in these interesting times that we live in right now. On another note, I'd like to publicly tell my wife I love her. Today is our 41st wedding anniversary. So anyway.
Hey.
Yeah.
Very nice.
We're anyway. That's why we decided to take a trip up here too. So, but anyway, thanks for the time and appreciate the opportunity to serve.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Wade.
I have nothing more to add tonight. Thank you.
Councilor Staley.
After Councilman Watkins' announcement, who can follow that? So I have nothing.
Thank you. Councilor Nelson.
I have to agree with Councilor Staley. Councilor Watkins just put us all to shame. And his wife is lovely and she puts up with him. So she's pretty amazing. Congrats, guys. And everyone enjoy and be safe out there.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have to say, Councilor Watkins, you also have the best background of any of us tonight with your I know you don't know what it is, but it's certainly memorable. But anyway, Councilor Malakina.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor.
Nothing, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Actually, I have nothing except to thank all of the staff who worked on the fireworks, and to tell you it was really delightful to see it from many locations, and I received a lot of messages that our citizens enjoyed the fireworks, and so I really appreciate everyone who worked on that. So with that, I will go to council requests for future reports and updates. Councilors, Vice Mayor, are there any requests for future reports and updates?
Madam Mayor, this is Vice Mayor Lingenfelter. I do have one, and I forgot to say happy anniversary to the Watkins, so happy anniversary. I would ask Mayor or City Manager Foggin, he recently reissued the FAA land release schedule, which I appreciate. I wanted to ask if he and staff could examine that and look for any other areas that you think we may be able to expedite on that schedule. If there's no other areas, that's fine, but at least to look at it.
We will look at that and report at the next council meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good point. Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll
Okay, any second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
No one wanted, no. Okay, Councilor Wade. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
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 We stand adjourned, and yeah, congratulations, Councilor Watkins, on your anniversary.
Thank you.
Good
Mayor.
night, everyone.
Have a good evening, all.